because what we're going to look at next is going to be a little different. We're going to call that part 2. I don't think I'm going to write it up that way on the website, but for those that are actually listening to the story, understand that this idea, the explanation that came until this point was part 1, and then we're going to look at some different things in part 2. Okay, so let's do it like that. So here we go with history again. Okay, we are roughly going to start this part 2 at the time of the Enlightenment. This is roughly the time of the Renaissance. Just after that is the time of the Enlightenment. What you have to understand, what you really have to understand, and the reason I'm going to point this out and beat it is because it's really important for us, we the people. And we the people is not just America. We the people is all the populations on the earth. I don't care if you speak Chinese, Japanese, Bengalese, or whatever E's, or whatever N, or whatever Ian you happen to speak. We the people is Earth population. Earth. Earth, our home. Earth is our home. The planet couched in this solar system. We live off the sun. This is a planet. It provides us with everything that we are. So when I say we the people, I'm not just talking about America, although that is a very American idea, I assure you, because of the Constitution. But understand that I'm talking about all the populations on Earth. And even now to this day, the populations on Earth are still stuck in the twin paradigms that are running. One of them is for the today we're calling them the elite, but it's like the class of the ruling, and everything's mine. Yeah, it's all mine now. Shut up, slave. And the other one is the the rest of we the people who've been indoctrinated to think a certain way. So that's where we are. So we are in this period. And we're going to look at this period from the Enlightenment period forward. And there may indeed be more parts of this. I told you there are going to be several of these, maybe several of these, if that makes any sense to you. Because it's very important for us to see. All right? So, by the time of the Enlightenment period, societies started coming back. Now, this is after the Black Plague, and, a whole bunch of people died. And that set up a sort of a new paradigm. And then shortly after that came the Renaissance period, and then shortly after that came the Enlightenment period. Now, in the Enlightenment period, which is the period we're going to look at with a little bit of detail, but you got to remember we're flying through history, because this is a story. In the Enlightenment period, there were groups of people that were, let me put it to you like this, society had come back to the point where there was education again, to a certain extent, not like, okay, this is America in the 1950s or something, but, education had come back, and people were learning things. Now, a lot of the stuff they were learning, they were getting ideas, and that's how this, when I say ideas of reality, like, hey, how does this really work? You got to remember, too, the Catholic Church was not able to put out the fire or stamp down and slaughter the idea of science. They weren't able to do it because it was just too powerful of an idea. It was just couched in reality. And so you got to remember the science and the new ways of thinking that were coming up in those days, those couple of centuries leading up to this, and in this period actually was a big thing to this Enlightenment period. And the Enlightenment period was pretty long, so it was having influences, but some of the educated people, even though they did come out of the well-to-do groups, they were getting educations, but they were looking at life not as, okay, we are the masters and you are the slaves. They were looking at life as, okay, I'm a little bit into science, and as a little bit into science, I'm looking at Earth as, wow, this is Earth. This is the planet Earth. And we're going to look at life a little differently. Also, that period of the year zero was hugely influential in this time period, especially in Europe and especially in the power groups. In fact, what eventually became the Holy Roman Empire, or the Catholic Church, with all of its diabolicalness and all of its stuff, which is what the Reformation period was about, those guys were not able to hold this back. And believe me when I tell you this, and this is very important to our story, because there's lots of propaganda, and there's lots of institutions, and they're part of the institutions to reinforce those two paradigm realities. Okay, and that's all I'm going to say there until later. Later we're going to blow this up. But even then they couldn't hold this enlightenment period back, because it was just too powerful. And there were too many people from the wealthy class, merchant class, and educated class that saw the beauty of this. And, you know, back in those, just like today, back in those days, hey, you know, politics was huge, okay? If you belong to this group, it's hands off. That's just the way it is. And that's still the way it is. I don't care if you go to a small town or you go to, you know, some giant center of Earth like London or something. I mean, this group, this person is with this group, so, you know, hands off, kid gloves. Now, if you're just rabble of we the people, like we the people are, well, then, you know, that doesn't apply to you. But, you know, we're looking at history. So those people were able to continue on with their deal, and, you know, they enjoyed some of the protections, which is really a good thing, because they were tied into the right they were tied into the right group of people. Now, what I really want us to look at with this Enlightenment period, the really important thing to see in this Enlightenment period, is what kind of little tiny groups it was fostering. And I'm saying in the beginning of it, because it was fostering a new sort of paradigm, a kind of paradigm that had never been seen before. Okay, did this happen because the galaxy shifted to a new place and we were getting different cosmic lights beaming on this planet, and thereby, you know, causing a new kind of consciousness? Or did it happen for this reason or that reason? I mean, we don't really know. I think all of those things came into play. Or, you know, was it something else? Who knows? Don't really know. All we know is this is how it went down. So let's look at how it went down. You started having these little pockets of groups, little tiny pockets of groups, but they were looking at ideas that now we know of as, hey, enlightenment and liberty. This is brand new. This had never existed. This was stamped out thousands of years ago by the rulers, you know, I want everything, everything's mine, I own everything. You know, the conquering groups? They stamped this out a long time ago because it was a real problem for them, because, hey, these slaves have to capitulate. They have to go along. This is the new reality. This is the new deal. We own everything. And shut up, slave. So that problem had been, stamped down long ago. Well, here it is reigniting itself again after the Black Plague and after a bunch of stuff and after the Renaissance and in the Enlightenment period. Here it is. Here it is again. Couching it, couching its ugly head, we will stamp it out of the rulers. How dare they? How dare they not be slaves? I mean, this is just how it goes down. So, you know, this is the ideas of enlightenment and the ideas of liberty, and there's science couched in this. It's very big. There's like this massive war going on behind the scenes that we really don't know anything about. And let me tell you something very important to understand here while you're listening to this, the whole of this story. The people that run the Institute, especially in this time, they are part of the twin paradigms. They really are part of it. The paradigms of the ruling types, the conquering types, the conquering groups, that paradigm was behind institutions, almost all of them, quite frankly, at this period. And, you know, they weren't exactly telling we the people of these different groups around planet Earth. They weren't exactly telling them, here's the real truth. Because you tell people the real truth, you're not going to be able to control them again, because they're going to realize, hey, wait a minute, we're Earthlings. We're like literal Earthlings. Greetings, Earthlings, take me to your leader, that kind of thing. We're like Earthlings. The ruling class doesn't want people to understand. They don't want we the people, to understand we're just Earthlings. And this is Earth, couched in a solar system, living off the benevolence of the sun. They don't want us to know that. It's folly for what they want. But this group, this Enlightenment group, they were fostering these ideas of enlightenment and liberty. Now, let's jump forward in time. So, time goes on, decades go by, maybe a century or more goes by, and now these groups are bigger. And now we have different technologies like printing press. Ooh, that was a biggie. We have different technologies, and we have things are different because we have technology. So word can spread much more efficiently than just, you know, a bunch of people sitting around and saying, okay, now you people go over there and tell these stories to that other group over there. That's a very slow way when you can just take this to a machine, write it all down and take it to a machine, because, you know, there are people that can read and write at this point in time, because, you know, education was starting to pick up again, and then just ship the volume of the work over there, and then they can just actually read it. It was amazing. You know, pack these up on your horses and take this over here. Go 600 miles that way, you go 800 miles that way, you go 1,012 miles that way, you go over here, you go over there, and put it in these cities. And that's how it was. That's how it spread. It spread really, really fast. And, you know, just like every single human being on planet Earth, every human being, I don't care if you can't even read and write in 2016, which is, you know, kind of hard to understand if you're in the computer age, but when you hear the truth, when you hear a little tiny piece of raw truth, it resonates in your soul. And that goes back to the 4 components, by the way. So hopefully you've listened to the 4 components. If you haven't, you need to get that into your mind too. And there's 6 of these. But I'm putting them out in order. And they're in order on the Wisdom Activist website. Anyway, before I get too deviated here, because of the technology, printing press and other things, and because even though the university systems, which, by the way, let me throw this in here because I want you to understand something. University systems in those days were not even close to university systems today. The university systems today compared to those days, it's a completely different animal. Very different animal. I mean, think about this. University. University. Universe. Universe. They weren't teaching a bunch of worthless stuff. Like, what's that one guy always says? Degrees in worthlessness. You weren't getting degrees in worthlessness back in this period. These university systems were hatched out because they were for the ruling class. They were teaching these people about the universe. They were teaching them critical thinking. They were teaching them stuff they just babble on about in university systems today, but really doesn't exist anymore. I mean, metaphysics was part of university. Metaphysics, let me say that again, metaphysics, and you know, if you say this in church, oh my God, oh, metaphysics, it's the devil. Metaphysics, sorry about that. That's what's to come. Oh, prepare yourselves. Yes. Metaphysics was part of the university system because they were teaching people about the universe. These places with all of their money and power were set up by the people that had the money and power, the ruling classes, and they were set up for their people. That's why if you didn't come from the right family and you didn't